Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Nadim Ahmed. I'm the Deputy Director of the OECD Centre for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities, and it's a great pleasure to be able to welcome you today at today's launch of the 2026 edition of the OECD Tourism Trends and Policies. And I have a copy here, which you may not be able to see. In fact, you can't, but I trust you. There's a copy here in hard copy, a fantastic tome of a volume of our work. And it's the 1st of July over here today in France, of course, and it's the start of the summer holiday season. And tourism is again, I think, very much in the headlines. And this year, as we've seen, and unfortunately, it's becoming increasingly the norm. The headlines are again in the context of extreme heat, reminding us of just how vulnerable tourism is becoming to climate change. But the headlines also reflect heightened geopolitical tensions, including the evolving situation in the Middle East and the impacts those are having on transport costs and indeed generally in the context of uncertainty. And they're affecting travel demand and, of course, travel patterns. But tourism isn't something that should only grab our attention as tourists, or of course when crises strike, whether those crises are COVID-19 or because of inflationary pressures or geopolitical tensions or weather-related events. It's a strategic economic sector, and we can forget that too easily when we're lying in our hammocks, trekking up Machu Picchu, or visiting the Eiffel Tower. That tourism is also a really important driver of economic growth. It attracts investment, supports millions of jobs, and it strengthens economic competitiveness. And so across the OECD, tourism directly accounts for around 4% of GDP. And in some countries, it contributes much more. And at the destination level, it can account for the lion's share of economic activity and employment. It's also, of course, as many of you already know, a major source of services exports. But that contribution is often overlooked in macroeconomic debates. And we, of course, at the OECD have worked to ensure that it's part of that debate. Since even before the OECD was created, if we go back in time, the OECD Tourism Committee, and you'll hear more about the work of the committee today, certainly from our chair, Sergio. It's one of the organization's oldest committees. It was created in 1947 under the OEEC, which is the predecessor of the OECD, created during the Marshall Plan. Now, today, looking back and over that period of time, the sector matters, much more than ever. It's in the global economic outlook, it's in terms of the backdrop has been revised downwards. Governments are looking for new sources of growth, whilst at the same time facing, tighter public finances, and competitiveness as a result of all of that is back right at the very top of the policy agenda. Now, this publication, one of the OECD's most downloaded, makes a strong business case for tourism as a really important driver of growth and competitiveness. It brings together evidence and insights from across 53 OECD and partner countries. And I think one of the key lessons that comes through is the resilience in the sector, despite everything that's been thrown at it, and despite, of course, the increasingly challenging global environment that we're currently experiencing. But the recovery is uneven. And that resilience can't be taken for granted. And the report, and you hear much more on this shortly, explores just how tourism can remain competitiveness, become much more resilient, and deliver, of course, greater benefits for people, places, and businesses. And it also looks at how governments and the sector can better anticipate and adapt and, of course, respond to growing challenges, including the more frequent extreme weather events. Now, before I close my opening, very short introductory remarks, I want to take a huge thank you to our partners at the European Commission, whose financial support and, of course, their collaboration with us has made this report possible. And I was really delighted to see for the first time last year, in fact, the appointment of a dedicated European Commissioner for tourism that sent a really strong political signal about the strategic importance of the sector. And with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce a video message from the Commissioner, Apostolos Kostas, who shares the OECD's ambition to ensure that tourism remains high on the international policy agenda. So we have a little video from him and we'll start seeing that now.
Director Kamal Shawi, distinguished guests, it is a real pleasure to join you for the launch of the OECD Tourism Trends and Policies 2026 report. This flagship publication is always keenly awaited, and I would like to congratulate the OECD and all the contributors for the very important work that you've done. Over the years, it has become a key reference for policymakers around the world. It helps us to understand better how tourism is evolving and how public policy must evolve with it. And today, tourism policy is no longer just about attracting more visitors. It is increasingly about managing tourism in a way that brings value for destinations, businesses, residents, and of course, travelers. The European Union fully shares this vision. And later this year, the European Commission will present the EU's first ever strategy for sustainable tourism. It will reflect the need to move from tourism growth to tourism management, shifting the merits of success away from counting arrivals to measuring the quality of life for residents and the health of local ecosystems. Our strategy will support a competitive, resilient, and community-based tourism model with stronger focus on destination management, balanced tourism development, better data, and evidence-based policymaking, balancing economic growth with environmental protection and the well-being of local communities, minimizing the negative socioeconomic and environmental impacts, preserving our cultural heritage, diversifying to offset the impact of seasonality. A more resilient, smarter model to help build a globally competitive, sustainable, and inclusive tourism sector for the next decades. However, to achieve all these objectives, we will need quality, reliable data. This is essential. And to manage tourism effectively, we need to understand not only visitor numbers, but also tourism's wider economic, social, and environmental impacts. It is why the OECD's work is so valuable for us. By providing internationally comparable evidence and practical policy insights, your report helps governments to make better decisions and learn from one another. I would therefore like to reiterate the European Commission's strong support for our long-standing cooperation with the OECD in tourism. Together, we can help build a tourism ecosystem that is more competitive, that is more sustainable, more resilient, and that is better prepared for the challenges that we have ahead. So thank you very much for your invitation today, and I wish you a successful event.
Super. Well, I want to say thank you again to the Commission for their fantastic support, but also to the Commissioner for the fantastic intervention he made there. You noticed that he referred to the Director, Lamia Kamal Shawi. Unfortunately, and I should have said this at the beginning, she's unable to join us today because she was taken ill just before her intervention. But of course, no, she was would very much like to have been here today making these opening remarks. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce another member of the team, Jane Stacey, who's the head of the OECD Tourism Unit, and she's going to walk us all through the main results and present the key findings from this year's report. So Jane, over to you.
Thank you, Nadim, and hello, everybody. So we have some slides. They're up, so hopefully you can see this. So building on the context that has been set by Nadim and the Commissioner, allow me to highlight some of the key findings and messages from the report. So as Nadim mentioned, tourism has again demonstrated its resilience and its economic importance in recent years as the sector has faced a series of shocks from the pandemic and natural disasters through to economic pressures and rising geopolitical tensions, and indeed most recently the conflict in the Middle East. Yet the sector has continued to rebound, and this has been supported by robust demand. In 2024, tourism directly contributed to 4% of GDP across OECD countries, and we see significantly higher shares in some countries like Mexico, Portugal, Spain, where we see tourism is particularly important. The sector supported more than 6% of employment and generated almost 1/5 of service exports across the OECD also. So these figures really highlight the important contribution tourism makes to economic growth, jobs and trade, that macroeconomic context that Nadim was speaking to. And they also understate its impact, because these are the direct impacts. It doesn't capture the many indirect impacts that the sector has through its interconnections with other parts of the economy. So moving then to look at international tourist arrivals, these have really been driving performance in the last number of years, although the recovery rates do vary across countries. In 2024, international tourist arrivals to OECD countries increased by 8.1% to reach nearly 820 million visitors. That's exceeding pre-pandemic levels and represented 56% of global arrivals. We saw this growth continue in 2025, with arrivals growing a further 3.8%. So 2024, we still had some of that pandemic recovery, but we still saw in 2025 3.4% growth to reach an estimated 847 million visitors. Several countries, including, for example, Finland, Korea, and Japan, recorded double-digit growth in 2025 and welcomed record numbers of visitors. However, as Nadeem mentioned, this is an uneven recovery. Countries such as Germany, Ireland, and the United States have yet to return to their full pre-pandemic levels. So these results highlight both the strength of international tourism demand, but also the varying performance that we still see. So this report then comes at a time when tourism resilience is being again tested. Rising geopolitical tensions in particular and the conflict in the Middle East, these have disrupted travel flows, increased costs for tourism businesses and for tourists. And while recent diplomatic developments are expected to help restore confidence, uncertainty remains, and travel decisions are likely to continue to be influenced by concerns around safety, disruption, affordability. Despite these challenges, we do see that the outlook remains broadly positive. A recent OECD survey found that more than 3/4 of responding countries expect tourism performance in 2026 to exceed 2025 levels. Most countries report that tourism is either performing in line with expectations, that's about 55% of the countries, or better than anticipated, a further 25%. Only a relatively small share of the countries report a weaker outlook than expected at the start of the year, and that's where we see the impacts of the conflict are relatively constrained at this point. At the same time, significant risks do remain. Countries identify geopolitical instability as the most important challenge facing the sector between now and the end of the year, followed closely by persistent price pressures. Connectivity disruptions and slower economic growth in key source markets are also emerging concerns. Nevertheless, the long-term outlook remains generally positive, with some destinations already benefiting from shifts in demand towards the places that are perceived as safer, closer, more accessible, and perhaps also more affordable. So this evolving context reinforces the need for flexible and coordinated policy approaches. Tourism is inherently a cross-cutting sector, touching transport, infrastructure, regional development, the environment. Building resilience, therefore, requires coordinated action across different policy areas, while also balancing the economic, social, environmental impacts of tourism. Beyond these immediate challenges then, managing tourism growth is becoming increasingly important, and this was a point underlined by the Commissioner. Tourism brings jobs, incomes, investment, but the benefits are not always evenly distributed. In some destinations, concentrated visitor flows place significant pressure on the infrastructure, the services, the quality of life. And for this reason, the report places a particular emphasis on tourism's social impacts and the need to achieve more balanced outcomes for communities. One long-standing challenge within the sector is seasonality. Across OECD countries, around 40% of tourist nights are concentrated in just 3 months of the year. In countries such as Norway, Greece, and Sweden, more than half of inbound tourist arrivals and tourist nights occur within these 3 peak months. National averages, which is what we have here, often mask even greater concentrations at regional and at local level. And this is often where the pressures are felt most acutely. So as tourism continues to grow, and this is the longer term trend that we see, managing these seasonal peaks will be increasingly important for both destinations and communities. Geographic concentration presents a similar challenge. In 2024, the most visited region in OECD countries recorded on average 6 times more tourist nights than the least visited region. But in some cases, the differences are even more striking. In Spain, for example, the most visited region, the Canary Islands, recorded hundreds of times more nights than the least visited region, to the order of 740-300 more times. So that gives an idea of really the differences we can see across regions within countries. While this concentration generates significant economic benefits in the regions that benefit, it can also intensify pressures and also limit opportunities elsewhere. So governments therefore need to ensure that destinations have the infrastructure, the services, the capabilities required to accommodate visitors and to share the benefits from tourism more widely. To support this objective, the report identifies 3 priorities. First is strengthening coordination and destination governance. This means aligning national and local priorities, engaging communities in decision making, and tailoring tourism development to local circumstances. Ireland's destination experience development plans provide a useful example in this context, bringing together industry, local authorities and local communities under the leadership of the National Tourism Development Authority, Fáilte Ireland, and working closely with local destination groups to implement the plans. Secondly, managing tourism growth strategically. This includes encouraging visitation to areas that are prepared to receive more visitors, investing in supporting infrastructure, and integrating tourism into wider regional development. Japan's increase in its departure tax, for example, will help fund tourism infrastructure improvements and protection of natural and cultural assets. Third is maximising the benefits of host communities. This requires supporting tourism businesses and SMEs in particular, encouraging innovation, strengthening local value creation. Here, I would point to Peru's Turismo Emprende program, which is providing financial support to small and micro businesses in the tourism and hospitality sector to diversify and enhance the offer. Another major area of focus in the report is adaptation to extreme weather-related events. These events are becoming more frequent and more severe, with significant economic, social, and environmental consequences. Tourism is particularly exposed as many attractions are outdoors or located in vulnerable areas. Recent examples illustrate the scale of the challenge. Wildfires near Jasper in Canada in 2024, for example, resulted in an estimated tourism losses of 4.5 million Canadian dollars per day, while cyclones and floods in New Zealand caused substantial damage to tourism infrastructure and tourism revenues. The impacts extend far beyond the immediate physical damage. They include risks to health and safety, operational disruptions, changing travel patterns, environmental degradation, and reputational impacts that can affect destinations long after the event itself. And this is something we're very much seeing in Paris last week, for example, with the heat waves, and I know across Europe last week, and now in the United States this week as well, as heat waves are becoming more frequent. To strengthen resilience, the report identifies 3 priorities. First, integrating risk assessment, early warning systems, and crisis response into tourism planning. In the Netherlands, for example, the Destination Risk Scan Toolkit helps policymakers to assess climate-related tourism risks and make informed decisions. Second, investing in resilient tourism infrastructure and nature-based solutions. Greece has introduced a climate crisis resilience fee, and this fee helps to fund disaster prevention. It helps to fund recovery efforts, and it helps to fund the upgrade of tourism infrastructures to aid resilience. And the third area is strengthening the adaptive capacity of policymakers and businesses. And here I would point to Australia's National Sustainability Framework and Toolkit, which provides very practical guidance to help tourism businesses to manage their environmental impacts, to manage climate-related risks, and to support their sustainability goals. There is much more in the report than I can cover today, and I encourage you to explore the full findings, data, and supporting materials which are available on the OECD's website. I would just conclude, and maybe moving to the final slide, The central message of the report, as Nadeem mentioned, is in the context of this uncertainty. Tourism policy must focus not just on responding to the challenges, but seizing the opportunities, strengthening tourism governance, managing growth more effectively, and improving preparedness for geopolitical, weather-related shocks and other areas of uncertainty to build the resilience within the sector. Ultimately, the objective is clear. It's to ensure tourism delivers lasting benefits for communities while building a sector that is more resilient, balanced and future ready. Thank you. I hand back to you, Nadeem.
Super. Many thanks, Jane. And now I'm going to have the pleasure of handing over to Maya Bakran, the Deputy Director General at DG Move. And Maya, real pleasure to have you here with us, and going to hear you share your thoughts about the report's recommendations and how they align with the Commission's priorities. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Nadeem. I hope you do hear and see me. For some reason, I had some issues, so I'm now connected from a colleague's laptop. So
all good, and we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank God. It was last minute. Okay, so first of all, it is my pleasure to join you here today, and allow me first of all, on behalf of all of us here in DG Move, the tourism team, to congratulate you on another excellent edition of this truly flagship publication. We've just heard from Jane. We can all be satisfied. Tourism remains remarkably resilient. However, what is also clear from the report, resilience alone is certainly no longer enough in this increasingly uncertain world of ours. Tourism has to become smarter, more sustainable, better managed. Of course, this was also something that Commissioner would always highlight and emphasize in as his messages. So what I would really like to highlight, and what we appreciate about your report, is that it goes beyond analyzing trends. It really identifies concrete policy actions that governments can take. And let me perhaps use this opportunity to reflect on 3 recommendations contained in the report that particularly resonate with us, as we are, of course, working on the first European tourism strategy. I guess you all know it's coming out after summer. So indeed, extremely helpful to have your reports out at this stage. So back to recommendations. First, moving from tourism growth to tourism management. You rightly argue in the report that our successes in tourism should really stop to be measured only by visitor numbers. It's high time we stop measuring success by visitor numbers. Better destination management is really about spreading opportunities and pressures more evenly. And this shift towards better destination management is something that is clearly recognized by our member states, and they are pursuing this goal. Second, investing in better data, digitalization, and AI. Indeed, we cannot even talk about better destination management unless we have better evidence. And this is why we will, in the EU, strengthen our evidence base for tourism. You know that we are revising the tourism statistics regulation so that policymakers, destinations can really have relevant, timely, and granular tourism statistics, and then base their policy decisions on them. What we also want to do is to use innovative data sources and modern statistical methods much better than we do today. At the same time, of course, we don't want to increase reporting burdens. We will actually strive to decrease them wherever possible. Let me also mention that this month, Eurostat will publish a new set of sustainability indicators for tourism, and thus complementing the important work already carried out within the OECD and UN tourism. So we really believe that these initiatives, together with short-term rental regulation implementation and together with development of European tourism data space, will provide policymakers with better tools so that we can really support evidence-based destination management. Third recommendation I would like to just briefly mention is to really ensure that tourism delivers for communities. It has to continue to enjoy public support if we want tourism to remain competitive. So, I mean, ultimately, successful destinations are those that create value for both visitors and residents by supporting local businesses, quality jobs, cultural heritage, and basically overall community well-being. So we really, from our side, would like to particularly welcome OECD's growing work on social benefits of tourism, and we are really looking forward to continue this cooperation. In the final part, Jane also emphasized resilience. Indeed, we cannot overemphasize it. If you didn't manage to catch the news, just check what happened with Zurich Airport overnight yesterday. Incredible storm, and of course everything was blocked. So it is here to stay with us, and we need to and will be impacting our connectivity. And of course, without connectivity, there's no tourism. So allow me to conclude by saying, repeating again, that it's really the practical recommendations combined with the analysis of today's trend that is really specific value added of your report. So we will, of course, as I said, while working on the strategy, analyze it even more closely, given the perfect timing. And what else can I say to finish it off, but to say that we are truly looking forward to continue our excellent cooperation with you. Back to you, Nadine.
Super. Many thanks, Maya, for those remarks. And again, you can count on us to make sure that we too, continue that strong collaboration. So huge thank you for all the efforts that you've made. I should also say a special thank you to Marlene Bartes in your team. She's a delegate to the OECD Tourism Committee, and I think that we really value her team and the excellent support that she's had and the interventions she's made during the committee. And in fact, we're going to hear more about the work of the committee in a very short second. I'm about to introduce the chair of our committee, who's Sergio Guerrero. Are you there, Sergio? So Sergio is the Senior Director of Turismo de Portugal, and he's the chair of our OECD Tourism Committee. And he's going to lead us now, I think, with our panel. So Sergio, if you are there,
yes,
the floor
I'm
is
here.
yours. You are
here,
great.
Nadim. Thank you.
Good to see you. And I see you've taken off your tie, so I should have joined you in that before.
If you
Maya,
allow,
go ahead.
Just a special greeting from a Croatian to a Portuguese.
The winner takes the lead. Best of luck for everyone. Thank you, Maya. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And it's really a pleasure for me to moderate the following panel during the launch of this of our flagship publication at the OECD Tourism Committee. So we will break this, before introducing the panel, we will break this panel in two parts, and I think benefiting from the broad participants that we have around the table. The first one is understanding the context, and the second one looking a little bit about the future and reflecting on the topics that we had on the table. So on our amazing panel for today, we have Marie van der Plas, Head of Government Relations of TUI Group. I hope that you're there, Marie. I can see you.
I am here, yeah.
We have Tess Longfield, Senior Sustainability Leader at Travelist, I'm sorry.
Hello there.
I can see you, Tess. Hi. So we have Jennifer Aguinaga is the Acting Director of National Travel and Tourism Office at the U.S. Department of Commerce, and a long-standing friend. Good to see you, and I had a early morning for you, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us. We have Ryun Young, the Head of Government and Corporate Affairs for Korea, Hong Kong, and China at Expedia Group.
Hello, can you see me?
We cannot see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, and very good to be here.
Okay, thank you. And finally, we have another good friend from many years, Eduardo Santander, the Executive Director of European Travel Commission.
Hello, Sergio. Hello, everyone.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for making the time to be with us and to sharing your reflections on this. So as I was saying, first part is about reading the context. We're living, I would say, in certain times, and I think all of us around the table after the pandemic, we believe that, well, uncertainty was past, and now it's time for looking ahead. And what happened since the pandemic is probably we had 1 or 2 months that we didn't have anything to bother our agendas and to think a little bit about the future. So I'm starting with Marie, perhaps on this, and for the perspective of a global travel and tourism player, looking at this moment with several sources of uncertainty. How do you look at there? Are there big shifts or pressures currently reshaping tourism globally?
Yes, I think just first of all, on behalf of TUI, we wanted to congratulate as well the OECD for the excellent report, which also matches some of the trends we're seeing as it stands. So yeah, from our side, obviously, I mean, we see this is a moment of uncertainty, but we also don't see it as a moment of pessimism. Like, we know tourism is very resilient. We see that travel remains highly valuable for customers. Holidays do continue to be a priority, and we also see that strong and trusted brands matter even more in these uncertain times. So, I mean, as you were saying, obviously, we've had a lot of crises in the past, a lot of moment of uncertainties as well, whether it's geopolitical, economical, security concerns. So this is the tourism sector overall. This is not something new for us. I think, like, whether we're talking about companies, whether we're talking about public authorities, destinations, this is something we have had, unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of experience with. So we actually know how to deal with this kind of situation. But obviously, what has been happening in the Middle East as well now has reminded us of how geopolitical development can have an impact straight away on demand, for example, and also the perception of risk from people, whether the tourism infrastructure are open or not. So from our side at TUI, what we're seeing at the moment is indeed there is a shifting in demand patterns. So we can see that customers are still traveling, but the behavior is changing a little bit. So we might have seen a bit of a reduction of the booking windows, for example, where people might be a bit more hesitating as to, am I going to book? Where am I going to go? They're a bit more price sensitive as well. I'm talking obviously from our side, our biggest markets are within Europe. So there's also an economic context, which is not the easiest at the moment, which can also have an impact. And obviously, like the trust and the confidence in the destination and the safety assessment. So from our side, what we're seeing is that flexibility really is essential in these times of uncertainty. We need to be able to adjust capacities. We need to be able to support, obviously, affected destinations and also propose alternatives when and where needed, while we still maintain our long-term partnerships with our local partners, which is very, very key for us. So this is one of the priorities we're seeing, and we also need to adapt our offering for what people are actually wanting at this stage. So we need, and that's what we're doing at TUI as well. We're trying to go beyond the traditional tour operator model. We want to become more global. We're also offering, for example, hotels, cruises, experiences, differentiated product, and also expanding to new markets, which we see is a way as well for us to expand at this time. In terms of other shift we're seeing, we were talking about sustainability. Obviously, this is something that has been around for years and years and years. But from our perspective, we see it as like no longer just like a separate topic. It is a condition for long-term competitiveness at this stage. We know that tourism, to be successful, needs to create value for local communities. Obviously, this is something that can be challenging in some destination and something we've seen in the past few years as well, growing in some areas of the world. It needs to be socially accepted. And this is something where we see that organized travel overall can potentially help as well, because it helps managing the flows and the coordination as well locally together if we work obviously with the public authorities. And I think the last key things that we can see as at the moment, which was also mentioned already, and I think we'll discuss a bit further as well, is obviously the new technologies, the development of AI, which has been very, very fast. And this is something that we see. It is reshaping how people are searching for holidays, how they're comparing, how they're booking their travels. AI overall will give us an opportunity as well, as that's what we're seeing as a company as well, to offer more personalized travel. It can become more efficient, it can become easier as well, but obviously the platforms need to be in place for people to make use of that, and the brands, existing brands and strong brands, need to be able to adapt as well to these changes. So yeah, so from what we're seeing, tourism is still growing. It needs to be done in a more sustainable way, but yeah, tourism is resilient. We see that people still want to go on holidays. This is still a priority, but we see a bit of a change of like booking windows, let's say, model changing a little bit, but it's still a key driver for jobs and local prosperity.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maria. And I think that the shift in patterns that you were mentioning, it's quite interesting, because every crisis that we have some of these shifts that can be permanent. Remember that we had, well, the booking windows was the rule during COVID, but the cancellations policy changed, and that affects the way that we do business in a normal way. Thank you very much. And I'm gonna actually use one of your points to move to Tessa, to Tess. I'm sorry, because the topic of sustainability that Marie just put it as one condition for future competitiveness, and my question to Tess actually is, are we moving fast enough from sustainability ambition to actually systemic transformation in our sector? And do you see these moments of uncertainty kind of obstacles to the progress within sustainability that I think all of us around the table well aspire in terms of things that we want? So Tess, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Sergio. It's a real pleasure to be here today and alongside the panelists, and I just want to add my congratulations to OECD on the publication of this excellent report. Well, so are we moving fast enough? Well, we're certainly making progress. For those that don't know Travelist, we're a coalition of some of the biggest companies in travel and technology, founded by Prince Harry of the UK back in 2019. Around sustainable systems change, really. And we're seeing our really deeply committed partners collaborating on exactly this issue week in and week out in our working groups and task teams. But I think it's clear that we're not really moving fast enough. The report is showing, nearly half of tourist nights concentrated in just 10% of region. So in terms of that issue of balanced tourism, and both the commissioner and the deputy director of DG Move referenced this shift from counting arrivals to a more balanced approach. So I think and reference that we need more quality, reliable data to do this. So this is exactly why Travelist is leveraging its coalition of corporates and big companies. So it's that private-public collaboration in a pre-competitive coalition. In order to scale this data, we need to get sustainability data flowing freely and openly at the point of booking, as openly at the point of booking as price and reviews. So yeah, I would say we're not moving fast enough, but and we can't do it alone. That's the thing. We need to collaborate. And you asked, are these uncertain moments, are they an obstacle to progress? I would say not necessarily an obstacle. I think sometimes when you have these flashpoints, such as last week across Europe, it does concentrate the mind. I mean, I was in London last week for London Climate Action Week, and the irony wasn't lost on any of us that many climate action events were cancelled because of the climate. I think it can sometimes really forge us to move forward together. But yeah, and we're seeing from our partners that, and indeed from the rest of the industry, as Marie referenced, that sustainability does continue to be really key for both companies and consumers.
Yeah. Thank you, Tessa. And I think well, I think agree, and all the discussions that we're having as countries and shaping our program of work, that is really something that pops up. So it's not one thing that passed. It's something that we need to take care. And well, we're living now a heat wave in Europe, which is something that we as countries as well have to manage. And I think you also brought an interesting topic, which we are pretty much focused is on the need of measurement, and we've been working at the committee on measuring this, because unless we change the metrics, we will compare ourselves with the traditional ones, and that is not the shift that we need in that sense. And it's something that, well, I would say, and we are really pushing for international organizations alignment in this measurement, because I think that's a condition for us to progress in this field. Now we're moving to Jennifer, and well, all eyes are these days on the US. Well, Maya and myself, we have a long night on Thursday to this, and well, I would miss the opportunity of having your views on well, first, how are you living, and what a great event like the World Cup is impacting the US, but as well as, well, getting the feelings of organizing such an event. Is how do you see the role of an event like this for a long-term prosperity in the US?
Thank you, Sergio, and it's good to see you, and congratulations as well to the OECD on launching this publication. It's been such a pleasure to be part of the committee over the years, and I think you will hear that a lot of the points that I'm hoping to make today do resonate and align with the findings of the report. So again, thank you, Sergio, for talking about the World Cup. It is obviously top of mind for the United States and many of the countries around the world. From our point of view, the World Cup and events like it are much more than just a large sporting event. They are a once-in-a-generation opportunity to strengthen a country's long-term competitiveness. And from our perspective, the US perspective, we're approaching the World Cup with that mindset. As great as the World Cup is, it's not the end goal. Also, so some may argue that it is, but we're thinking of it as a catalyst for strengthening the competitiveness of our country for years to come. Events like the World Cup can really be truly transformative, but only if they're viewed as part of a long-term strategy rather than just one simple, successful event. So I think I've kind of put it into 4 ways that these events can create lasting value. First, events of this scale provide an unparalleled opportunity to introduce millions of first-time international visitors to destinations across countries, so across the United States in our case, and then also billions more through social media and television coverage. Our objective is that many of those visitors who did come here return, explore different regions, and then become lifelong travelers to the United States. And we hope that the viewers decide to take their first trip to the United States. We can already see this playing out across social media, with international visitors talking about how much they love everything they're encountering in the United States, from ranch dressing to the friendliness of the American people. So if you think about it, it's really the greatest marketing campaign that there can be for a country. Second, events of this scale can accelerate improvements that have lasting value and may not have been done otherwise, or perhaps may not have been done as quickly. So for example, there's investments in transportation, increased visitor information in host cities, increased entry-exit information, digital services, accessibility, workforce training, and also security. And these things don't just disappear when the tournament is over. They're going to improve the travel experience for years to come. And these investments also benefit residents and future visitors alike. So overall, they do end up making a destination more competitive, more resilient, and then better prepared to host more future international events. The third bucket, I would say, is that these events help strengthen public-private partnerships. One of the lessons that we have learned from preparing for the World Cup is that tourism doesn't happen in isolation. Success depends upon coordination across many parts of the government. So for the US, it's agencies like the Department of Commerce, which is my agency, but also transportation, homeland security, state, and then also local governments, and equally important, airlines, hotels, attractions, destination organizations, and just the broader private sector in general. These relationships that we have worked to build over the last year then can become the foundation for future collaboration on tourism policy and destination competitiveness. And it also helps keep tourism top of mind for agencies that may not think about it otherwise. I think many of us policymakers in the tourism space know it's not always easy to get cross-government collaboration focused on tourism. So this is just a great way to do it. And then the last thing I will mention is that these events provide an opportunity to tell a broader national story. So visitors come for the matches, but they also experience America's culture, national parks, heritage sites, music, local communities. We want them to leave with a richer understanding of the US than when they had arrived. And for the US, as many of you hopefully also know, the timing is especially significant. So the FIFA World Cup is coinciding with preparations for our 250th anniversary, which is taking place officially in a couple of days. And so again, these events present a unique opportunity for us to welcome the world, highlight American diversity of destinations, and just demonstrate the strength of tourism. So, back to the original question, I think that the real measure of the World Cup or large-scale events like this is that they will leave a lasting legacy of increased visitation, stronger exports, but also improved infrastructure and more resilient destinations across the country. So I think events should be measured, again, not by the success of this tournament, which lasts only 3 weeks, but whether in 5, 10 years, the country is more competitive, more connected, more attractive, and more resilient.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I would love to be there and stay until the end. That will be really amazing. But I'll try to focus on two very important things that you put in on the table, because I think they are key drivers of policy that we need to put on, that we can put on the table for the future. One is, how can tourism, the improvements that driven by tourism can benefit residents? And I think there is one angle of effectiveness. Well, they will benefit residents, but we also have to tell the residents that it's because of this large event that things are improving. And the second one, which is, I would call it an opportunity, because organizing an event like this requires, as you mentioned, the alignment between the government structures, and the whole of government approach is something I'm pushing for a long time in the tourism sector. And actually, these exercises are opportunities for strengthening the links between these two groups. Well, thank you very much. Now we move to Kyung. And we have the opportunity of having a view from the perspective from the Asian market, and probably, and Eduardo probably will touch upon the topic in a few minutes as well. But the Asian market is had a different recovery from the pandemic, and I think we were all. At least in Europe, that was our perspective. We were seeing the Asian market back on track. So good to have Kyung to give us, the perspective on how is the Asian market responding to this period of uncertainty. Do you see important shifts of demand, and how you see the current year as a whole? So Kyung, good to have you.
Yes. And first of all, thank you very much for the kind invitation, and also congratulations on the new report. And I had a chance to look at it, and I found that it very well resonated some of the APAC market that I cover. So going back to your question, so from Asian market perspective, uncertainty is clearly being felt, just like everywhere else, but the way we see is somewhat a little bit different. There's like some simple decline in travel demand, but in the meantime, there's also upside, and we see different traveler sentiment and behavior. They are looking for more cautious and more selective and more value-considered destination and activities and during their travel. So truck demand is still there, but again, there's a further consideration, and obviously the price and flexibility, safety, reliability, and even foreign exchange currency. And also recent airfuel surcharge and hit large of long-haul destination from Asia Pacific perspective. So we see more regional and domestic travel rather than going long haul than it used to be. And speaking about the World Cup, and there used to be large supporters from APAC usually, but this time due to the currency exchanging and long haul becoming more costly, so we see less and our supporter actually being in the US, and unfortunately. So again, but still momentum such as momentum and other mega events and happening across APAC region, such as BTS concert and Coldplay concert in Hong Kong, that still draw large of attention. And actually, when BTS announced its concert in Busan, second largest city in Korea, and search keyword toward Busan city internationally, and has increased more than 2,000% within 2 days. So we see large of demand and positive sentiment still, but the behavior has been shifted a little due to the older uncertainty around the world right now.
Thank you, Kyung, and I think it's one conclusion that we're having from almost all of them is travel is on top priority for people. I think COVID, that's the legacy of COVID to ourselves. It is important, but people adapt, and I think you've brought here well the regional perspective, which is, I would say, comprehensible in the sense that we had one conflict in the middle of exactly in the middle of the pathway to especially to Europe, but you brought another source of uncertainty, which is the rise of prices, either
Right.
exchange rates, which is something that, well, at least in Europe, we don't see that perspective is so hard, but as well the rising costs of traveling through the jet fuel prices. So I think uncertainty is one part, and I believe having the Asian markets back on track and globally expanded is key for everyone, and also for Asia as well. Now I'm going to Eduardo, and Eduardo, well, ETC has been following closely recent developments in the Middle East crisis as well in other crises, and I'm one of the fortunate persons to have the opportunity of benefiting from there. And actually, I heard that today you're launching an update on the situation. So great to have you, and great that you made the time to be with us, and well, to have the opportunity also of having a perspective of how do you see and how ETC sees the impacts of this uncertain moments in tourism in Europe.
Thank you, Sergio, and thank you, OECD. What a timely way to start the summer, but with facts, figures, and with some prospect, And if we talk about Europe, and I've just made a quick distillation of all the previous interventions, but we are talking about congestion at a destination level and at a border level. We're talking about connectivity issues. We're talking about accessibility issues. Definitely, it's been already mentioned many times, climate events, the heat waves, but beyond that, what's next that? And, last but not least, we know that people want to travel, but there is an issue with pricing and inflation that it's very much remaining in the back head of every single traveler, not only Europe, but worldwide. If we focus on your question, Sergio, and we are very much monitoring the situation in the Middle East, why is that? What are the main challenges? Well, the main challenge is very obvious. Aviation connectivity and airspace disruption is one of the biggest pillars for European tourism. European tourism runs on aviation. despite the fact that the Middle East or the major Gulf hubs, if you want, like in Abu Dhabi, Doha, Dubai, and Bahrain, move almost 15% of world air international transit traffic. This, of course, has a domino effect all over the world, but particularly the Gulf corridor is affecting de facto already European inbound tourism. Moreover, we have the impact on higher aviation and transport costs. We know that the crisis is not yet closed. The war is still somehow ongoing. The Strait of Hormuz is still not totally open, or if it's open at all. So this is creating so many conflict-driven increases in oil prices, in jet fuel, and moreover, uncertainty. Uncertainty, as we know, Sergio and colleagues, is the biggest enemy of decision-making in tourism. As our colleagues from TUI has explained, people are booking later. That's another observation from our research, later booking behavior with shorter booking windows. This is a classic symptom of uncertainty. Moreover, the long-haul market disruption, Asian people are very loyal to Europe. Europe is a very, very important destination for them. But of course, higher energy prices are affecting disposable income, consumer confidence, inflation, and business costs. This is something that it's not only leisure travelers, but a lot of businesses are starting, to question, the cost of their operations. But, like we say, Sergio, and we've been together through many other crises before, whether it was COVID or not, there are always an opportunity. And in this case, I would say that this crisis is reinforcing Europe's image as a safe destination. And so far, so good. I think the heat waves obviously are starting to be a problem. And while in terms of, how can I say, safety and security and stability, there is like a big USP for Europe, but the heat waves are starting to take a toll on many destinations. People questioning whether I should go there or not. Is it just too hot, or is this I'm not enjoying my stay, or or the new diversion of demand, where we see people going north in Europe. So that has a positive effect in the distribution of flows. The so-called phenomena of collocations of people diverting, from going to the Mediterranean basin and rather going, to alpine destinations or northern Scandinavian countries, that has a positive effect. We should not forget that the biggest European market is the European market itself. So it's Europeans traveling within Europe. And we see that this is starting to occasionate, like a lot of changing in behavior, whether it's shorter trips, rail travel, nearby destinations, and a lot of domestic. We see that a lot of people are staying in their whole countries, in their own countries. Last but not least, opportunities here are acceleration of resilient policies, hence the timely publication of this report. Congratulations, OECD, because I think, like all these crises reinforce priorities that has to do with diversifying air connectivity, crisis preparedness, destination resilience, energy efficiency, digital traveler information, and flexible business models. I think that's one of the things that we are reconsidering at ETC. What is the role of an NTO? What is the role? How can we help governments to decide effectively what should be the agility and flexibility on protecting the brand of Euros as a safe, reliable, connected, sustainable, inclusive, and resilient destination. Last but not least, the implications here are still open. The conflict is still ongoing, Sergio and colleagues. So we cannot make predictions beyond 2 weeks. And we hope that also the climate crisis that we are living all over Europe and beyond with the heat waves will not last for the rest of the summer. Otherwise, we will have to launch another seminar after the summer and see where we really stand, because so far, so good. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo, and thank you for bringing, I would say, a very good set of topics that actually demand action from governments and action from destination management organizations. And I think we're all here for, and some of us for a long time, it's sexier, the marketing side, but I think the more discussions that we have on these topics, the more goes into management, which are not even easy things to deal with. And also thank you for bringing the topic of opportunity, because I think one of the beauties of this industry is that we always look at the bright side of life, and Europe is seeing their image as a safe destination as an opportunity, and actually the heat waves that we're having have to mean for destination management organizations an opportunity for pushing effectively into expanding tourism season, and not only relying on the summer as a way of growth. Well, now I would like to go to round two, and let's hope that we still have a couple of minutes in the end to have some questions from the audience. And my idea is to moving from, well, the diagnosis and the context to a little bit about the direction for the future. If tourism is entering, and I think all the discussion moved into this, into a more complex and uncertain era, then policies and governance models also need to evolve. And also the commissioner, Dizzy Coxes, mentioned that there is a need of change, of metrics towards a new path in terms of development. So looking ahead for the future, what should be the priority focus of tourism policies, and what new tools, capabilities, and partnerships will governments and industry need to develop? And back to Marie.
Yes, thank you. So I think like from our side, what we're seeing is that obviously there will be a need for like policies that allow whether company or destinations to grow sustainably, stay competitive, and also to respond to disruption, because we know obviously there are some disruption now, but there will be other coming up. I think one key thing from our side is that no matter what policy you're looking at, I think we will need to have like a very strong partnership in between the public sector and the private sector, because we think like to make things actually go forward, we do need to work together. The first priority that we would actually identify is very much aligned with what Jennifer was saying. So at the moment, we see that in most destinations, in most countries we work with, there is quite a fragmented approach where the Ministry of Tourism can be quite separate from the other ministries, and there is no alignment really in between what they are doing within the country. And so what we are seeing is like we would need more alignment, more integrated as well approach in between the ministries and the government level, so that tourism is seen more as a strategic sector and strategic development, let's say, with a holistic approach rather than the way which is seen now, which is sometimes a bit separate or just seen as like a side sector, let's say. So this would be something that we would see as a priority. Then the second one for us is very much linked to aviation. That's something we see that there is a need to protect openness and connectivity overall. We know that tourism overall depends on reliable and predictable access to a destination. Like if people are not able to reach a hotel, an activity, then obviously also the local community is going to get impacted by this. So we see this is something that is especially important for us when we talk about island destination, long haul destination, and also the emerging destination and emerging tourism regions. What we're seeing in terms of aviation at the moment is there are some areas in the world which are putting some policies that are a bit more protectionist, and it is something that is growing. It might get more complicated to get some flight rights, for example, which is not necessarily something we've seen in the past, but it seems to be a growing topic as well. So in order for these destinations or regions to get the trust of the investors, we think there is a need for a bit more like transparency from some of the governments as to what they want to do, and also make sure that there is a fair aviation framework in place. So this is one of the key points we're seeing. The next one is still going back, obviously, to sustainability. So there is a huge investment, I think, from the industry overall in terms of like trying to make whatever operations we have more sustainable. But this is something, and that's what I was talking about, partnership, that companies can't do on their own. Obviously, we need to work all together to make things progress as fast as possible. And therefore, we need the right infrastructure, we need the right frameworks in place to ensure that whatever technical things are available can actually be used. I mean, to give a very clear example, for example, when we see the cruise sector, we see that a lot of the new cruise ships, for example, they do have capacities to use shore power, which can reduce quite significantly the emissions. But most of the ports don't have so far the ability to actually provide this kind of shore power. So the technology is there, the infrastructure not necessarily. So that's something where we need to work together collaboratively to ensure that in the future we can make use of all these systems that do exist and that would be, well, useful for everyone in the end. And then I think the last one would be in terms of the skills and the capabilities, because we were talking a lot about the transition, the changes that are coming mainly in terms of, well, technologies, for example, and we need to ensure we know that the market for tourism, we do get a lot of people just entering the labor market as well. We need to ensure that there is the right training, that we provide employees, whether this is from a private perspective or also from an education ministry perspective, to be, for example, giving the right skills to people so that they can then develop their career in the tourism sector. So that's, as I was saying, from our perspective, there's different area that we can see that new policies might be needed, new tools might be needed, but the key thing will really be the partnership in between the private and the public sector, which is existing, but I think we need to move a bit more into like practical cooperation rather than just consultation.
Thank you, Marie. So it's a practical approach. I think it is quite important, and I believe it's a great point. Now we move to Tess.
So yes, Marie touched on quite a lot of things around sustainability that I would completely echo in terms of that. Yeah, how we present sustainability information and the frameworks being regulated, and really standardizing the way that we calculate, so some of the methodologies. So in order to have that availability of compliant and high quality data at scale, because we believe that that's really a precondition to credibly inform travelers and to measure impact, which leads to trust. And then, when we're talking about the public and private collaboration, how we present and test how to present sustainability information to consumers is important, and we're working closely with our partners and industry bodies to do that. So we're seeing some interesting policy trends globally on things like, strong moves towards standardized emission calculations and methodologies in transport, and for us, we work on the travel impact model, which was developed by Google in partnership with Travelist, and we're also bringing rail into our work. So we're very interested in developing a methodology on rail too, with other partners. But I think you asked about the next decade, and goodness, the pace of change with tools like AI is absolutely astounding, isn't it? But I think we're all going to have to get to grips with it. I think it presents a real transformative opportunity to accelerate our sustainability goals, but we also want to look past that hype to see the real practical value for the sector. So right now we really do have a massive opportunity to use AI as a force for good. So examples we're seeing across the travel industry: for consumers, it can help nudge travelers towards lower emitting transport, as well as suggest alternative destinations to manage over tourism. And for our industry, it's, as Marie touched on, it's about smarter operations, optimizing energy use in hotels. There's some fantastic ways AI is being deployed to cut waste, food waste, and also standardizing that fragmented sustainability data. Another aspect is that policymakers could be looking at in coming years, and that has a real potential, huge impact, is on contrails, mitigating the impact of contrails, those wispy white lines that you see in the sky after planes have been through. And that there's some fascinating studies with our partner Google and American Airlines that show that we can easily decrease contrail formations by around 60%, and that could reduce aviation's climate impact by 20 to 30%. And there are some pilots going on now that show exactly how we can do that, and it could be as little as $4 per passenger. So to do that. So there's so many topics for policymakers to get to grips with, but I think what's really important is that we are working more closely than ever with our partners at industry bodies as well, such as the GBTA, Nextdoor, Travel Forward, ITOA, ETC, etc., all the acronyms. But it's great if we can speak with one voice to policymakers and represent our respective partners, so that we can ensure that sustainability is embedded from the very beginning when these policies are being made.
Thank you, Tess. And I think you've brought you've brought AI as a force for good. I think I'll take that to my agenda, because I think you've put it in a very nice way. But you also mentioned one thing that it's fundamental, and I think here the OECD Tourism Committee has a role to play, which is building trust around sustainability, and that is directly connected to methodologies and to measurement, and it's something that we are really focused on, and I agree with you, it's absolutely central to allow us to bring trust to the system, and I think that's probably the way to move forward. Now going to Jennifer.
Thanks again, Sergio. So I think your question is spot on. Tourism is obviously entering a much more complex era, and that means that our policy frameworks have to evolve as well, as I think both Marie and Tess were saying. So while we in the United States at the federal level are still primarily focused on growth, so bringing in more visitors and increasing tourism spending, we also have to think about resilience, competitiveness, security, technology, and community impacts all at the same time. So it's a lot. So from my perspective, there are 4 priorities for the next decade, which I think we've heard from on the panel before, and then some of the beginner speakers. So these will be of no surprise, but this is just from the US government perspective. So first, policies need to become more data-driven and forward-looking. So we think that governments can no longer rely just on historical statistics. We need better real-time data, better forecasting, and just better market intelligence in general to be able to anticipate changes in traveler behavior, disruption, and emerging opportunities. So in the National Travel and Tourism Office, we see data as a strategic asset that will help both policymakers and then businesses, our stakeholders, make better decisions. But we also know that's easier said than done. And we, especially as the government, can be a little bit slower. We will need some time to update our data collection methods. Second, resilience, as we've heard a lot today. This has to become a core element of tourism policy, whether we're talking about extreme weather, public health events, inflation rates, geopolitical uncertainty. Disruptions are clearly becoming more frequent and more complex. So that means governments need stronger coordination, as I said previously, and as we've heard throughout the panel, across transportation, border agencies, emergency management, DMOs, and of course the private sector. Obviously, we'll never be able to eliminate these disruptions, but we should be able to recover more quickly and maintain that traveler confidence. Tourism has obviously proven to be incredibly resilient in the past, but we still need to better prepare to be able to speed up that recovery and also minimize any economic damage to the degree that that's possible. So basically, the sector needs to move from crisis response to risk management. So this could mean better data, scenario planning, emergency coordination, and communication before those disruptions occur. So from our perspective, we see the role of government as being able to convene across agencies and within the industry And then for businesses and destinations, resilience means diversifying markets, improving real-time traveler communication, investing in continuity planning, and using data to understand where demand is shifting. So extreme weather is now a business risk and not just an environmental issue. Destinations that are able to invest in resilient infrastructure, accurate information, and rapid recovery will better be able to protect those jobs and also that visitor confidence. The third bucket is that we need to keep tourism competitive by making travel easier, safe, and more welcoming. Travel is obviously highly competitive, and visitors have choices. So we are trying to reduce unnecessary friction as much as possible while also maintaining strong security. We are continuing to invest in efficient travel processes, digital services, infrastructure, accessibility, and customer experience, which all contribute to competitiveness as a destination. And this was especially important leading up to the World Cup, and then will continue to be important in the future over the next decade. And then finally, we need to embrace innovation responsibly. Digital technologies and artificial intelligence, as we just heard from Tess, they offer tremendous opportunities, improving visitor information, forecasting demand, helping small businesses market themselves, and just overall more effectively helping destinations manage visitor flows. But we also need to invest in workforce skills, cybersecurity, and trusted data so that businesses of all size, but particularly the smaller ones, can benefit. So I think underlying all of these priorities is one essential principle, which again, I think has been highlighted again across the panel. Tourism is one of the few sectors that touches transportation, commerce, culture, etc. So partnership is so important. Success depends on these strong public-private partnerships and collaboration across all levels of government. We've seen this not only through the World Cup, but also through the implementation of our national travel and tourism strategies, where agencies can just work together with industry toward all of these shared objectives. And I think this collaborative model becomes even more important as the challenges facing tourism become more interconnected. So I think just, summing it up in one sentence, over the next decade, tourism policy should shift from simply managing growth to building a more competitive, more resilient, and more innovative economy that can deliver lasting benefits for businesses, travelers, but also the host communities.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you especially for bringing the topic of foresight. We worked on that topic in the past at the OECD Tourism Committee, and then probably will be in our agenda for the coming years, because I think it is something that help us to think strategically a little bit about future scenarios, not only one, because I think no one has the answer for that only one. So we have to be ready for to be more adaptive in that sense. Now we're moving to Kyung.
Yes, and I absolutely agree with all the panelists and I have shared. And one common thing I hear all the time in this setting is the word fragmented. And I believe that travel tourism industry is very much fragmented in every possible way. From payment, from search, OTA, and there's also traditional, conventional travel agency, also activity conductors, and very much fragmented. And then also there's a behind the scene and distributors and etc. etc. So I oftentimes policy and government they also try to be the one of the player itself, but considering the fragmented and segmented the industry, I believe the role of the government and the policy should be more focusing on connecting dots and orchestrating the industry as a whole. So policy in general need to do two things at the same time: have the sector manage short-term uncertainty while also building long-term capability. For the short term, that means improving coordination and maintaining policy clarity and creating an environment where business can respond quickly to operational and market changes. And in the longer term, digitalization and AI should be any government, any policy priority. And I believe this will provide a big opportunity to the industry as a whole, as the accessibility to the technologies become much lower and a lower barrier to regardless of the resource any organization have. And one practical observation from me is that many national and local DMOs, they are trying to invest heavily in their own AI app, and mostly focusing on travel planning on their destination. But in the meantime, the real challenge is that not only building that, but how drive actual adoption and scale. And we see increasing trend that people are using ChatGPT or other AI tools for their planning. And that's obvious, and I do the same. But in the meantime, it's very difficult for me to go, let's say I go to XYZ destination and I'm trying to find their own local XYZ app by the government, by the DMO that they provide. Rather, we instantly go to ChatGPT or Claude or other more globally adaptable and available AI tool that we can easily access. So rather than being one of the player, and government and police role should be coordinate everything as a whole, and formulating and revitalizing cultivating the industry as a whole. And this is from my observation from the APEC region.
Yeah, thank you, Kyunga. I think if we and thank you for bringing the topic of technology, and I think in a very smart way, because I'm a huge fan of technology, and sometimes I start dreaming a lot about what can be possible. And I think it was Marie that mentioned this, is actually technology is there already. So the problem is probably we're not adjusting, either governments or either businesses, our practices to better take the use of technology. And you mentioned the AI tools that are available. And yes, if we look, and if we are on holidays, and if we look on the effective usage of technologies by tourists, probably is higher than the ones that the industry delivers. So there is a gap that we need, I would say, in a very speedy agenda to cope that gap, because it might be a source of disadvantage. Another important thing that I think is almost a conclusion, and the need of the government to orchestrate, which is, I would say, a slightly different way of tourism policy that is coming as a need. So it's not only setting up the conditions to enter the market, is not only doing the regulation as well, the regulating function, but actually working like a master of ceremonies, a master of an orchestra, a very complex orchestra. Thank you very much for this. And now moving to Eduardo. And we've discussed a lot in the past, so great to have your perspective as well on this topic, looking a little bit into the future.
Thank you, Sergio. And I'm just going to try to synthesize what is left. Of course, the previous speakers have exposed, many things that we shared from a European perspective. But maybe, in Spanish language, we see, that you have to see the forest, not only the trees. And there are a couple of things that are very important in everything that I've heard and that we've been discussing today. First of all, I think we have to keep raising awareness about the role of tourism for sustainable development. May this heat wave be just a reminder, okay, that this is not over, and that climate emergency will continue to shape our business and any other human activity. Second, and more specifically, as a strategic implication, is, and following up from my previous intervention, is that we have to monitor aviation connectivity exhaustively rather than just destination demand. We see that there is a dependency on connectivity, whether it's aviation, but also rail connectivity. In Europe, we are expending so much effort and so much budgets in redeveloping rail infrastructure as an alternative to travel more sustainably. Second, I think you mentioned that before, Sergio, but I think we have to communicate much better about safety, about stability, about reliability in a transparent way. And you mentioned the role of governance, the role of framing messages in the right way, especially around crisis and around conflict. Who is the responsible entity? Who is the responsible institution? And here, my appeal to multilateralism, what OECD, what ETC is the working together, is to foster a strong results-oriented partnership around shared policies. We need to define those 3-4 pillars and work in the same direction. Sergio, you are a researcher yourself. I cannot forget that in my last statement, we have to strengthen market intelligence. Market intelligence is the source of every dish around tourism. We need to really understand what's going on before almost it's happening. And this is where we have to closely tracking everything from booking windows that Marie was talking about, cancellations, traveling sentiments, behaviors. Not Maya was talking about, counting tourists. We are beyond that question already. We're not counting tourists. We are asking them, what's next. And, last but not least, and again, is support the destination resilience, and not just with words, not just waiting, but encouraging flexible policies, diversifying source markets, close coordination with institutionals, but also with other players that maybe are not naturally on our tables, on our webinars and seminars, like the energy industry, like the infrastructure ministers and people in charge of housing, environmentalists to tell us about what's next. I think we have to put science with science and stop, demanding that someone else will do the job, but rather that we take responsibility and accountability and do the job for ourselves.
Thank you very much, Eduardo, and thank you all. I think it was 1 hour. We could have stayed a couple of more hours discussing this, because I think your perspectives are, they're actually an excellent input for the work that we have to do as a committee. And I think we are in a track in our committee decision process. We've been preparing the program of work and budget for the coming year, and I think we are pretty much aligned. And you've talked about challenges that are part of the agenda. You've talked about flexibility and the adaptation that we need to build. And Eduardo, agree with you. We cannot wait that someone will do it for us. We need to do it, and we need to do it collectively. And you also brought the topic of multilateralism, which is, I think, we are served globally for many. We are many international organizations working on the topic. And that I think there is a space for creating a common agenda to solve those topics, and building. And I'm also wrapping up because we're running out of time as well. There is an ecosystem approach to build on in this topic, and moving towards an active collaboration between public and private, and public. And also private and private. I think all these angles have to be covered. And finally, I think some of you touched upon, which is people and the skills of people that we need for the future. We're a human, and we are proud to be a human to human industry, and that's really our USP. And we have also to support the transformation of agenda for the people. So with this, I'm already on the closing the remarks. I'm incredibly happy for the opportunity of moderating this panel and having the benefit of wider perspectives covering private sector, covering sustainability agenda, covering regional perspectives that I would say hope that for the whole audience that is huge audience that has followed us through this webinar could benefit from that, and hopefully that their agendas might be working. So Publication is available on the OECD tourism website as well. You'll find there recent work that we've been doing in this field, and well, hopefully we'll be able in the coming years to also tackle several of the issues that we've been discussing. So with this, I would end the webinar. Thank you all of you that participated, all of you that were engaged, and thank you once again for being part of this. For me, it was really a pleasure. So hope to see you soon, and well, best of luck, and best of luck for the ones that are still in the World Cup. Jennifer, please pray for us in the US. Thank you very much. Bye. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.